There is a strange truth unfolding around your soulmate right now, and the surprising part is that they never intended for it to happen. In fact, they worked very hard to prevent it. They made a decision, a serious decision, to move forward with their life and leave certain emotions behind. They convinced themselves that the connection had already served its purpose. They told themselves that looking back would only create confusion, and that the healthiest thing to do was focus on the future. For a while, it seemed like they were succeeding. Their days became occupied with responsibilities, goals, routines, and distractions. They stopped allowing themselves to dwell on memories. They stopped revisiting old questions. They stopped searching for signs. Everything appeared to be moving in the direction they wanted. But what they did not realize was that some connections cannot be silenced simply because the mind decides it is time. Your soulmate genuinely believed they had reached a turning point. They believed they were becoming stronger, more detached, and more emotionally independent from what once occupied their thoughts. Whenever memories tried to surface, they pushed them away. Whenever emotions tried to speak, they distracted themselves. They became experts at convincing themselves that the past no longer mattered. And the longer they maintained this approach, the more they started believing their own story. They told themselves they were finally free from the emotional pull they once felt. They thought they had gained control over their heart, but deep beneath the surface, something remained unfinished. There was a feeling they never fully addressed, a question they never fully answered. A part of the connection that never truly received closure. Although they could ignore it temporarily, they could never completely erase it. It remained quietly waiting beneath the distractions, beneath the routines, and beneath the carefully constructed narrative they created about moving on. What makes this moment so significant is that your soulmate had no intention of returning to these emotions. They were not searching for you. They were not trying to revisit the connection. They were not hoping for reminders. Their focus was elsewhere. Their energy was directed toward creating distance. Yet life has a way of revealing unfinished truths when we least expect it. Sometimes the very things we try hardest to leave behind return when we finally believe they are gone. And right now, your soulmate is standing on the edge of one of those moments. They do not fully realize it yet, but something unexpected is already beginning to shift beneath the surface. The plan they worked so hard to follow is about to be challenged by an experience they never saw coming. An experience that will force them to question whether they ever truly moved on at all. And listen carefully, because what happened next was not something your soulmate planned for, expected, or even believed was possible. After spending so much time convincing themselves they had moved on, an unexpected trigger entered their life and changed everything. It did not arrive with a warning. It did not announce itself. It appeared quietly during an ordinary moment that seemed completely insignificant at first. Yet the effect it had on them was impossible to ignore. One moment they were focused on their daily routine, and the next, a memory connected to you surfaced with a clarity they had not experienced in a very long time. At first, they dismissed it. They assumed it was nothing more than a random thought. After all, everyone remembers people from their past from time to time. They told themselves it would pass. They believed that within a few hours, maybe a day, The feeling would disappear, and life would continue exactly as before. But that is not what happened. Instead, the memory stayed. It lingered in the background of their mind, long after they expected it to fade. The more they tried to focus on other things, the more they became aware of its presence. What surprised them most was how vivid everything felt. Certain details they thought they had forgotten suddenly returned. A conversation, a laugh, a specific moment they had not thought about in months or perhaps even years. These memories did not feel distant. They felt alive. They felt recent. They felt emotionally connected to something that had never completely disappeared. Your soulmate found this deeply unsettling because it challenged everything they believed about their progress. They had worked so hard to create emotional distance. They had invested so much energy into convincing themselves that the chapter was closed. Yet one unexpected reminder seemed capable of undoing months of emotional effort. Naturally, they resisted. They told themselves it was temporary. They told themselves they were overthinking. They tried to move their attention elsewhere. But every attempt to ignore the feeling only seemed to make it stronger. Then something even stranger began happening. One reminder led to another. A song appeared unexpectedly. A familiar phrase surfaced during a conversation. A place they had not visited in a long time suddenly brought you to mind. It felt as though life itself kept placing reminders in front of them. Individually, each moment seemed insignificant, but together they created a pattern that became impossible to overlook. The more these experiences occurred, the more uncomfortable your soulmate became. Not because they disliked thinking about you, but because they could no longer explain why it was happening. Logic told them these were random coincidences. Logic told them memories are normal. Logic told them not to read too much into it. Yet their heart was experiencing something very different. Their heart was reacting with an intensity that surprised them. They started asking themselves questions they never expected to ask again. Why does this still affect me? Why does this connection still feel present after all this time? Why do these reminders feel so powerful when I thought I had already moved forward? These questions began appearing more frequently, and each time they appeared, the answers became harder to avoid. What makes this situation even more significant is that your soulmate was not actively searching for meaning. In fact, they were doing the opposite. They were trying to move away from it. Yet somehow, the connection kept finding ways to return to their awareness. The more they tried to explain it away, the more persistent it became. The more they resisted it, the more noticeable it felt. Deep down, a realization is beginning to form inside them. They may not fully understand it yet, and they may still be trying to rationalize what is happening, but part of them is starting to suspect that this is more than a random series of memories. Part of them is beginning to wonder whether there is a reason these emotions are returning now. Whether there is a reason your presence continues appearing in their thoughts, despite all their efforts to move forward. And that question is becoming impossible for them to ignore. Because what started as a simple reminder is slowly turning into something much bigger, something deeper, something that is awakening feelings they believed had been left behind forever. And listen to this, because the unexpected reminders were only the beginning. What your soulmate is experiencing now goes far beyond simple memories. Something much deeper has started happening inside them. The emotions they believed were gone have begun returning with a strength they never anticipated. At first, they tried to tell themselves that they were simply being nostalgic. They thought perhaps they were remembering a chapter of their life that once mattered. But the more they reflected, the more they realized this was different. Nostalgia fades. Nostalgia comes and goes. What they are feeling now refuses to leave. It remains present even when they try to focus on other things. It continues speaking even when they try not to listen. The memories that have been resurfacing are no longer random fragments. They are becoming clearer, more detailed, and more emotionally powerful. Your soulmate has found themselves thinking about specific moments involving you. Moments they thought had been forgotten. Moments they believed had lost their significance. Yet now those same moments feel more meaningful than ever. They remember the way certain conversations made them feel. They remember small details they never expected to recall. They remember emotions that once felt ordinary, but now seem incredibly important. It is almost as if their heart has started preserving pieces of the connection that their mind tried to leave behind. This realization has created an internal shift they cannot ignore. For a long time, they believed moving on meant leaving everything associated with the connection in the past. They thought progress meant distance. They thought healing meant forgetting. But now they are beginning to understand that forgetting and healing are not the same thing. Some experiences leave lasting impressions because they were meaningful. Some connections remain alive in the heart because they carried lessons, emotions, and significance that cannot simply be erased by time. The more your soulmate reflects, the more they begin questioning the story they have been telling themselves. They start wondering whether they ever truly moved on at all. Perhaps they became busy. Perhaps they became distracted. Perhaps they focused on other priorities. But did they actually release the feelings, or did they simply bury them beneath other parts of life? That question keeps returning because the emotions now surfacing feel far too genuine to be ignored. There are moments when they find themselves caught off guard by the intensity of what they are feeling. They will be going about their day, completely focused on something else, and suddenly a memory connected to you appears. The emotional response is immediate, not forced, not imagined, real, and every time it happens, it becomes harder for them to maintain the belief that the connection no longer matters. What surprises them most is that these feelings are not only about the past, they are also about the present. They are beginning to recognize that your importance in their life did not disappear simply because time passed. In fact, the distance has made certain truths easier to see. The absence has revealed things they overlooked when the connection was closer. They are realizing how much your presence influenced them, how much certain moments affected them, and how deeply some experiences became woven into their emotional journey. And listen carefully, because this is where everything starts becoming impossible to deny. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that the heart often knows things long before the mind is willing to accept them. Their mind spent months convincing them that they had moved on. Their mind created explanations, reasons, and narratives designed to keep them moving forward. But now, their heart is speaking with a clarity that is difficult to silence. It keeps bringing them back to the same realization. The feelings they thought were gone never truly disappeared. The more they resist this truth, the stronger it becomes. The more they try to rationalize it, the more emotionally undeniable it feels. They are starting to recognize that there is a difference between leaving a situation and releasing a connection. One can happen physically, the other happens emotionally. And right now, your soulmate is realizing that a part of their heart never fully let go. That realization is changing everything, because once they acknowledge that these feelings still exist, they can no longer pretend that the connection belongs entirely in the past. Something inside them continues reaching toward you. Something inside them continues revisiting the memories, the emotions, and the meaning of what was shared. And as this awareness grows stronger, they are being pulled toward a truth they have been avoiding for far too long. A truth that will soon force them to choose between continuing to resist what they feel, or finally accepting what their heart has been trying to tell them all along. And listen carefully, because this is the point where your soulmate finds themselves caught in a battle they never expected to face. The emotions have returned. The memories have returned. The connection has returned to the center of their thoughts. Yet despite everything they are feeling, a part of them is still trying to resist it. A part of them continues telling them to keep moving forward, to stay focused on the path they chose, and to avoid reopening doors they worked so hard to close. This has created a conflict inside them that grows stronger with each passing day. On one side is logic. Logic reminds them of all the reasons they tried to move on in the first place. Logic tells them that the past should remain in the past. Logic tells them to focus on what is directly in front of them, rather than what has already happened. Logic wants certainty, control, and predictable outcomes. It encourages them to avoid emotional risks and protect themselves from disappointment. For a long time, this voice was the strongest one inside them. It guided their decisions. It helped them maintain distance. It gave them reasons to keep walking away from feelings they did not fully understand. But now another voice has become impossible to ignore. The voice of the heart continues growing louder. It appears during quiet moments when distractions disappear. It appears when they remember something meaningful that was shared between you. It appears when they think about how unexpectedly powerful these returning emotions have become. Unlike logic, the heart is not concerned with explanations. The heart is not interested in creating distance. The heart only responds to what feels real. And right now, it keeps leading them back toward the same place. Your soulmate is beginning to realize that no matter how much they try to focus on practical reasons for moving on, their emotional reality continues telling a different story. Every time they convince themselves they are making progress, another memory appears. Every time they believe the feelings are fading, something reminds them of your importance. Every time they attempt to silence the connection, it somehow finds a new way to make itself known. This internal struggle has become exhausting. There are moments when they feel completely certain they should continue moving forward without looking back. Then suddenly a memory, a feeling, or an unexpected reminder shifts everything again. The certainty disappears. The questions return. The emotions resurface. They find themselves standing between two opposing forces, unable to fully commit to either one. What makes this conflict so difficult is that neither side feels completely wrong. Logic presents reasonable arguments. It reminds them of challenges, uncertainties, and unanswered questions. But the heart presents something equally powerful. It reminds them of meaning. It reminds them of emotional truth. It reminds them of the connection that continues existing despite every effort to leave it behind. And listen to this, because your soulmate is starting to notice something important. The harder they fight these feelings, the stronger they seem to become. The more energy they spend resisting the connection, the more present it feels. What they once viewed as a temporary emotional reaction has evolved into something much deeper. It has become impossible to dismiss as coincidence or nostalgia. The persistence of these emotions is forcing them to ask questions they have avoided for a very long time. Why does this connection continue returning? Why does it remain so emotionally significant after everything they have done to move forward? Why does their heart continue reaching towards something their mind keeps trying to leave behind? These questions do not have simple answers. Yet your soulmate is beginning to understand that the struggle itself may be revealing something important. If the connection truly no longer mattered, there would be no conflict. If the feelings had genuinely disappeared, there would be nothing left to resist. The very existence of this inner battle is showing them that something meaningful still remains unresolved. Now they find themselves standing at a crossroads. One path leads toward continued resistance. The other leads toward honesty. For a long time, resistance felt easier. It felt safer. But lately, the cost of resisting has become heavier than they expected. The emotional exhaustion, the constant questioning, and the repeated return of these feelings are making it increasingly difficult to continue pretending that nothing is happening. Deep inside, they are starting to realize that some connections cannot be pushed away forever. Some truths continue returning until they are acknowledged. And your soulmate is approaching a moment where ignoring what they feel may no longer be possible. The battle between logic and the heart is reaching its turning point, and the outcome could change everything they thought they knew about this connection. And listen carefully, because your soulmate is beginning to understand something that once seemed impossible for them to accept. After all the effort they invested into moving on, after all the distractions, all the reasoning, all the attempts to create distance, they are slowly realizing that this connection never truly left them. It remained quietly present beneath the surface, waiting for the moment when they could no longer ignore it. And now that moment has arrived. The unexpected triggers, the returning memories, the resurfacing emotions, and the battle between logic and the heart have all led them to the same place. A place where the truth is becoming impossible to avoid. What surprises them most is how differently they see everything now. In the beginning, they viewed the connection as something they needed to move beyond. They believed that distance would eventually weaken the emotional bond. They assumed that enough time would naturally erase what remained. But instead of fading, the connection revealed its resilience. Instead of disappearing, it continued finding ways to return. And now they are beginning to wonder whether there was a reason for that all along. Lately, your soulmate has become more aware of patterns they once ignored. They notice how often thoughts of you appear when they least expect them. They notice how certain memories arrive at exactly the moments when they are questioning their path. They notice how difficult it has become to dismiss the emotional significance of what they are experiencing. What once felt random now feels meaningful. What once seemed like coincidence now feels connected to something deeper. This shift in perspective is changing the way they interpret everything. They are no longer asking how to escape these feelings. Instead, they are starting to ask why the feelings continue returning. They are no longer focused on creating distance. They are becoming curious about the lesson hidden within the connection itself. And the more they explore that question, the more they realize that some experiences enter our lives for reasons that are not immediately obvious. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that not every connection is meant to be forgotten. Some people leave impressions that remain long after circumstances change. Some bonds continue influencing us, even when we try to move away from them. Some relationships become part of our personal growth, teaching us lessons about ourselves, our emotions, and what truly matters. And as they reflect on everything that has happened, they are starting to see this connection through that lens. What makes this realization so powerful is that it is coming from within. No one is forcing them to think this way. No one is telling them what to feel. The awareness is emerging naturally through their own experiences. Every reminder, every emotion, every unanswered question has gradually led them toward a deeper understanding of what this connection represents. And that understanding is becoming harder to deny with each passing day. And listen to this, because your soulmate is reaching a turning point. The resistance that once felt strong is beginning to weaken. The certainty they once had about moving on is no longer as convincing. The emotional walls they built are slowly coming down. In their place is a growing willingness to acknowledge what their heart has been trying to reveal all along. They are beginning to trust their feelings instead of running from them. They are beginning to accept that the connection still matters instead of pretending it does not. For the first time in a very long time, they are allowing themselves to consider a possibility they once rejected. The possibility that being pulled back toward you is not a setback. The possibility that these emotions are not a mistake. The possibility that the connection continues returning because there is still something important left to understand. Now they stand between who they were and who they are becoming. The version of themselves that wanted to move on is slowly giving way to a version that seeks honesty and clarity. They can feel the shift happening inside them. They can feel their perspective changing. They can feel themselves becoming more open to truths they once avoided. And deep down, they know that something significant is unfolding. Because the force pulling them back toward you is no longer something they can explain away. It is no longer something they can dismiss as a temporary feeling. It has become part of their journey, part of their growth, and part of the truth they are finally beginning to accept. And as they move forward, one realization continues growing stronger than all the others. No matter how hard they tried to move on, something deeper kept leading them back to you for a reason. And that reason may soon become impossible for them to ignore.